يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر والرجز فاهجر ولا تمنن تستكثر.
Hello.
Fun.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Did you just call you Isaac?
Yeah, you can call me Isaac.
Hey, Isaac, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so looking forward to having a respectful conversation with you.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. How can I be of service?
Sure. So, I believe in God. I'm a deist, so I believe in God, but not I believe in religion. Not resistant to it, but there's just a lot of
Okay.
questions that I have for all religions. So I'd like to ask you. Mainly the first one is I believe that if God were to be in any religion, I believe that he would give an equal opportunity to everybody to find him and not make it towards where people would be led astray and then be punished for that
Mhm.
if it's not in their full understanding. And I think one way that kind of confuses me within Islam is that
Mhm.
supposedly there has been five scriptures given. If I'm not sure if you're Sunni, because I know understand in Sunni they also talk about the scrolls of Abraham. Uh,
Mhm.
but I understand as well that there's the four divine books, which is the Torah, the Psalms, and the Injil and the Quran. But one thing I don't understand is that it it seems that the narration is that the previous books that were given to humanity have been corrupted. However, there are currently billions of people in the world that are supposedly following these corrupted books. So
Mhm.
my question is, why would Allah allow
Mhm.
the previous books to be corrupted if they're going astray, if it's
Mhm.
leading people astray, when he could have just kept them all pointing towards the final revelation of the Quran?
Mhm. Sure. So just a couple things. You said that you're a deist, right?
Yes.
So the principalities is the things that I really enjoy discussing because I think they're the root of the issue. So, in
Sure.
regards to the first thing that you had mentioned, as far as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving an equal opportunity to people, okay,
Yes.
what I've seen in my experience is that oftentimes people are under the presumption that an equal opportunity is not given or one is not going to be given. So, let's say, for example, circumstantially, that someone does not receive the message of Islam properly, right? Meaning that let's say that they're on some like Aboriginal island and nothing had come across their way in the form of either like a literature piece or an oratory piece or anything to that extent, right? So you're
Right.
aware that Islam offers a separate test on the day of judgment for these people, right?
Yes, I understand that those who have not received the message correctly, they will be judged according, not to their own
Mhm.
standards, but in a way that's fair.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now that means that Islam has a solution for the people that have not what you would consider an equal way, an equal opportunity for this plane of existence. Okay. Now, in regards to the people that have received the message properly and that have chosen to reject it, this is something completely different, right? So the
Right.
first presupposition that you're under is, and again, this is something that plagued me as well, is you're saying that they have not gotten any opportunity whatsoever, and now they're fighting this uphill battle, which is completely unfair, and they're upon no guidance whatsoever. And the Quran actually instructs us differently in Surah Al-Insan, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He guides people whether they're grateful or ungrateful, right? So the Islamic position, the Quranic position, is that guidance is being provided to these people. Now, the consequence of their rejection of this guidance is what you're seeing, meaning that they have not accepted it. Now, you're trying to thread that into the previous scriptures and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would allow the previous scriptures to be corrupted. And the answer to this is actually quite simple because that was part of the plan. The plan was to never preserve these scriptures in the way that he preserved the Quran. So the scriptures were meant for particular people at a particular time, and the Quran is meant for people from the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ all the way to time immemorial now. So to the future, until the day of judgment, right?
Right. I understand. Yeah, I understand. I want to just re-clarify a few things.
Sure, yeah.
Firstly, I want to say that I understand what you mean about people who have never heard of the correct message of Islam. But
Mhm.
when I'm trying to thread this in with the previous books, is right now we have a lot of people, specifically those of other Abrahamic faiths,
Mm,
who the reason why, whether it's in the case that they didn't hear it properly or just for the reason that they follow the other religions,
mhm,
is that for they're literally brought up to believe because of the corrupted scripture that they have,
mhm,
that anything that goes against what their scripture says isn't true. And that's why I'm thinking that it's just a little bit different of a situation where you're saying that you have somebody who has never heard the message properly versus people who are hearing a lot of things or hearing about the message of Islam, but they're specifically drawn away from it because of those corrupted books. And I understand what you're saying as well, that those books were meant to be only for the people of their time and not to be, whereas the Quran is for the message for all of humanity. But
mhm,
then again, my question is, if that were to be done in a case that it says in the books, this is for you, but one day in the future we will have another prophet, which I do believe is a claim that a lot of
mhm,
Muslims say nowadays, that there are scriptures in both in the, what is it, the Torah and in the Injil,
mhm,
that kind of foreshadow a coming comforter or a coming prophet that would be
mhm.
leading to the rest of the world, if you know what I'm talking about. And that's
Yeah.
why I guess my question is, it seems like there are parts of the Bible that or the Injil, the Torah, that seem to be pointing towards Muhammad, and
Mhm,
that if the Bibles were just if the previous scripture was just preserved completely, because it is God's word, and I believe that if God gave us a word, it would be preserved.
mhm.
Then, if they were to preserve it and it would just say in there very clearly that we will be having a coming prophet, I think that would be a clear evidential reason that would push everybody into the direction of Islam. But right now, because those books are
Mhm.
corrupted, it seems to be the world is in chaos, so to speak, and that's why I just don't understand.
So, just a couple of things. You said that you believe in these scriptures. So, are you now changing your position from being a deist to a Christian?
That Yeah, so sometimes I speak a little bit like as a Christian or as a Jew. I am not in
Mhm.
either of those positions. I'm just saying that
Okay.
it's that the Jews are in that mindset, the Christians are in that mindset. I am in
Okay.
neither of those mindsets because I feel like it's if they don't connect.
No problem. So I can't speak to generalities, right? What I can do is have a dialogue with you as to where you're at. So I'm going to take your word
Sure,
for it that you're still sticking to that deistic framework. And really, the answer to
sure.
your question is quite simple, because if these people were to follow the Quran holistically, meaning the Quran tells you to ponder, to reflect, if something was indeed from your Lord, then it would not have contradictions. There's falsification tests that people can run. So the issue really
Right.
is, I think that what's happening is you're being overly charitable and you're saying, hey, listen, we need the previous scriptures to actually give us that type of guidance. And what I'm trying to tell you is the Quran stands on its own 2 feet. You don't need the previous scriptures anymore because they're not applicable to you. They're not applicable to
Right.
me. They're actually the thing that is applicable to everybody is the Quran. So, like for example, let me get in the style of thought, right? A rational person can come to the conclusion that if there are errors in something that is taking the position of being God's word, that it can't be God's word. A rational person would say, okay, look, this whole idea of what the deity is that I worship, right? This triune deity. Does this actually make sense? Did Jesus actually teach this, or is this a later development? And I encourage you to take that train of thought and just think about what happened between the revelatory scriptures even before the Quran. Why was it that Isa alayhi salam was sent? Why was it that Dawood was sent? Why was it that Musa was sent? Is because there was constant and perpetual corruptions of scriptures. So if you take that train of thought, then really what you're basically saying is let's not even look at the Bible, let's not even look at the Torah, let's look at, before that. Let's look at the Zabur, right? And I'm trying to tell you that you're just going to go down this rabbit hole of basically pure speculation, when the Quran is here to clarify and to give you that clear guidance between what is true and what isn't true. And it's a much easier way to reconcile this question. Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you not to follow the religion of your forefathers, but he tells you to go and investigate for yourself. And you can just come to this conclusion through just these rational principles. You don't have to become this, grandiose scholar and like this. You don't have to have that type of an interaction with the scriptures, because your Lord is a merciful Lord. And if he is here to guide everybody between layman and scholar alike, then the idea of that guidance and the accessibility of it now has to be there, right? So why bother? Why bother developing this type of framework and saying, hey, look, all these people are under this form of misguidance, when all these people were given the same tool you and I have, which is our rational thought?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. I'm just thinking more so, kind of just taking a little bit of a step back, that everybody as they grow up, they kind of have a different starting point in what they're looking at in regards to rationality.
Sure.
So, for example, for me, I think one reason that would actually bring me closer to Islam than my family members is
Mhm.
that I'm not really like reading several things within the Bible, the New Testament, the Old Testament. I feel as though many things don't align. And that's
Mhm.
why, for me, I'm really, mm, I've read the Quran and it just makes a lot more sense to me.
Sure.
There's definitely a lot less contradiction, so on and so forth. But I'm just letting you know that that's kind of how my mind works.
Sure.
However, I do believe that a lot of people in the world, when they grow up, they just really fall in love with their religion without really studying,
Mhm.
and it's just what they're told, what they're told, what they're told, what they're told. So I
Absolutely.
guess,
Yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree with you that people are socially conditioned. That's a given,
sure,
right? As a matter of fact, we have a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says that people are born upon the fitrah, but then through their social conditioning, and again, I'm just very paraphrasing, that they become something else, right? So,
yeah,
they either become a Christian, a Jew, or they become a Magian, right? So he's basically saying that whatever your social influence is, that you are now going to go veer that way. And this is where, it seems to me that you're a very rational person. It seems you're very intellectual and you're curious, and I really respect that. This is where you can be a beacon of hope and a beacon of change to not only your immediate sphere, but the greater community as well. Because if you see the truth for truth and you see the falsehood for the falsehood, there's no point in discussing the falsehoods. Now, what you can do is you can explore the validity of the truth, so you can start putting it to a greater and greater test, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really, from what I've gathered, he has just one key requirement, and that's sincerity. So if you're a sincere person, then he is going to grant you that gift of acknowledging that sincerity, and the gift of guidance. For the whole like polemical sphere and like what you typically see online, a lot of the stuff is not grounded in sincerity, right? Meaning that there's let me give you an example from the Quran, right? Do you have the ability to open up a browser right now?
what? Not at this time, no. But if you
Okay.
could give me like the verse that I can copy it and look it up later.
Yeah, let me just read it to you, and also for the benefit of the audience, if you don't mind, just give me just a moment just to pull it up really quickly. Okay. And this happened to me just quite recently. It was probably about a week ago or so, where there was a pretty prominent debate that happened. I'm not going to mention people on the platform because I don't like to give them clout. But the idea was, there was a pretty prominent debate with the topic of relevance that you're talking about, in regards to the previous scriptures and then the Quran pointing over to them and so on and so forth. So I'll forego the Arabic for now, and I'll just read to you the English so that it can help you better understand. So this is in chapter 6 of the Quran, and this is verses 91 through 94. So if you ever want to revisit them, I encourage you to do so.
Sure.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the following. So he says, and they did not appraise Allah with true appraisal. When they said, Allah did not reveal to a human being anything, say, who revealed the scripture that Moses brought as light and guidance to the people? So obviously there was a need for light and there was a need for guidance. Why? Because corruption was taking place. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So the exact thing that I'm telling you. Okay, so you, Jews, make it into pages, disclosing some of it and concealing much. So now he's telling you the idea of how this corruption took place. Okay, and you were taught that which you knew not, neither you nor your fathers. Say Allah revealed it, then leave them in their empty discourse, amusing themselves. Okay, so you can see that there's a clear motive and there's a clear ulterior motive from what's the truth and what's not, for reasons that you can think of: financial gain. You could there's tons of things, right? Okay, now on to the next verse. And this is a book which we have sent down, blessed and confirming what was before it. So this is the Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching you about, that you may warn the mother of cities, which is Mecca, and those around it, those who believe in the hereafter believe in it, and they are maintaining their prayers. Continuing to 93, and who is more unjust? And this is the key that I really want you to focus on. I just wanted to give you some context. And who is more unjust than one who invents a lie about Allah or says it has been inspired to me? Okay, so now I want you to think about what the Christian narrative, the Christian biblical narrative is. That there's 42 anonymous authors who have received inspiration. And this is including Paul as well. Okay, while nothing has been inspired to him, and one who says, I will reveal something like what Allah revealed. And if you could but see when the wrongdoers are in the overwhelming pangs of death, while the angels extend their hands saying, discharge your soul, today you will be awarded the punishment of extreme humiliation for what you used to say against Allah other than the truth, and that you were towards his verses being arrogant. So now he's painting the picture even further as to what their mental state of mind is. And this is the final verse that I want to conclude with you. And it will be said to them, and you have certainly come to us alone, individually, as we created you the first time, and you have left whatever we bestowed upon you behind you. And we do not see with you your intercessors, which you claimed that they were among you associates of Allah. So now I want you to think of the general polemic sphere, okay? Because these people are claiming implicitly and sometimes even explicitly that they're being representatives of God, right? Because that's the whole idea, is when you talk with a Christian, he's representing Christianity. When you talk with a Muslim, you hope that he's representing Islam properly, and so on and so forth. So now, where are the intercessors? Where are these people that used to argue polemically and that used to say these things and attribute these things about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which he himself did not attribute? Where are these liars and these concealers and these grifters and these manipulators? Where are they? Where are they now? You're alone now. Now, what's my point here, amongst many, right? The grand point is you will be alone, and you must conduct your research alone. And you have to know that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most merciful and most gracious, that he is indeed going to give people the test that they can accomplish. And he gives you the rational faculties to accomplish that test with flying colors. I actually think the game is rigged in your favor, which I can go into detail if you wish, but I welcome your thoughts from this, because this is the idea. And let me just finish. It says here, it has all been severed between you, and lost from you is what you used to claim. So now when you recognize the truth, you're going to want to throw away the lie. And you can't, because you held on to it. So that's the thing, brother, is you have to be sincere in your approach, and your journey is your own. If you're listening to these people that are claiming that they're being inspired, these 42 anonymous authors or these polemicists or what have you online, you're going to have some really tough questions, and you're not going to have answers to them. And I don't wish that for you or anybody else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to say firstly that, especially because I was Christian at one point, and when I look more into the Bible, I really want to look more into like the authorship. And at the end of the day, I just, not only do I not know who the authors of the books are,
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult for me to just believe 100% that everything that they say is true without any scrutiny, which is kind
Sure.
of like the whole thing to do. And that's
Sure.
why I do appreciate, especially with speaking with people that are Muslim, because they have answers. Whereas usually within Christianity, the answer is don't ask questions, rely not on your own understanding. And that's why I'm not really a big fan of authority and authorship. And where I'm getting at is I have a really hard time just believing anything that I read. So that's why I really, really like to kind of
Sure.
question. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. But anyways, yeah, I understand what you're saying in regards to what you're saying. So I'm not a really big fan of the Islamic dilemma. I'm willing to concede that the Quran is makes the claim that the original previous scriptures have been corrupted, and that's why I just want to. I'm more so making the claim, and I think you got it, but I was more so making the claim is that if they are corrupted, does that still make it fair for everyone if they're following this? And then I believe what your answer is. Um, the goal is to look into the scriptures that we have and then ask yourself rational questions.
Yeah.
So that was a really great answer, and I appreciate it. I'm not gonna take more of your time. I have
No,
a few more questions
you're
that.
welcome to
Yeah.
stay. I mean, meaning like if there's anything else that I could do to help you learn more about Islam, or to, obviously I'm here to invite people to accept Islam. One thing I would say is, because I was in your position at one point where I would label myself like a master skeptic, meaning that I also had difficulties of believing things, especially in things that I read. Um, and I would genuinely be curious as to, what's your framework to determine the validity and the truthfulness of what something is being said. So nothing can offer anything even close to the Islamic framework, and that's through my research. And obviously, I'm sure you've conducted your own. But the idea now is that if you're sticking to the principalities, it doesn't take much to become a Muslim, and the well of knowledge, it's never going to run dry. Meaning, if you, as a deist, you believe that there's only one deity worthy of worship, you're saying
Right.
half of the Shahada, right? It's La ilaha illallah.
Right.
There's no God but God. Now, the only really second half that's stopping you is Muhammad and Rasulullah. So, is there anything that I can be of service with to help you bridge the gap of whatever size of a chasm you may have, even if it's by a nugget, to recognize him as indeed that he is a messenger?
Yeah, and that's definitely exactly what you said. The first part of the Shahada is like the Tawheed, the belief in one God
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
easy for me. It's kind of already my conclusion.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, to find out what is something that stops me from, or what is my framework of determining whether a person is reliable or not, because
Mhm.
like you said, I'm very skeptical, especially of people. That would be the motive. And that's why the second part of the Shahada is the Rasul,
Mhm.
like the final prophet Muhammad, and then
Sure.
those before him. I want to know really what their motives are, and that's why. I mean, we could talk about this forever, but I mean, I can think of what one thing that I've noticed with most religions around the world is that the motive is for authority and
Mhm.
power that leads to more of an authoritative type government or totalitarian type government. And that's one thing that I guess this should be a longer discussion, but I do believe that that
Mhm.
when I look into uh, what motives Muhammad might have had, it seems like the Sharia law is more pushing towards a totalitarian style, authoritative
Mhm.
style, um, power,
Mhm.
powerful government. Which I mean, I think is good, of course, that if you have a powerful government that does good. But my only problem with that is when you put too much authority into the hands of humans, it almost always goes bad. And that's why I
Sure.
had a discussion with somebody just the other day about Sharia law, and then
Mhm.
almost every time I'm told that, well, there is no country, there is no nation in the world that truly practices Sharia law. But
Mhm.
that's kind of my whole point is that if you have a set of guidelines that points towards Sharia law, which is going to be a more of a like a centralized government style that enforces certain rules,
Mhm.
any any religion that has that is not going to lead to a perfect society because the people that are in power are going to abuse that power. And
Mhm.
then, I mean, obviously, I don't believe that Afghanistan is a true. true Sharia law at all. But I'm saying that when you have people that are looking at, for example, there's in the Al-Bukhari, it says that those who change their religion, it's not legal to change your religion once you've already converted to Islam. And that's how the original, I believe the original Islamic Empire practiced, the Ottoman Empire practiced, and then obviously several nations around the world. It's not legal to change. And for me, that's an authoritative power that for me, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, it makes complete sense in the human eyes. Okay, the human motive is to assume power and to conquer. And I think that that's more towards the lines of where I see the Sharia law implication in the world. Again, I'm just monologuing now,
No,
but
it's
you can
okay.
kind
So
of see
let
where
me, no problem.
seeing
Let me
that.
try to help unpack some of this stuff because, again, not trying to, sound cliche, but these are also things that I have, they've gone through my mind, right? Just either for natural curiosity or to see what the system is. But I want you to be really cautious on one of the things that you had said, because you said that it's in the hands of human beings. Okay.
Right.
The Sharia is not the Sharia of mankind. So the Sharia of the Quran and the Sunnah are both revelatory Sharia. So like everything is going to defer to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and it's going to defer to the Quran. Okay. Now the Prophet ﷺ deferred to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obviously, he had communication with God in it to a degree that you and I just simply don't, right? That's an ordeal in itself. So now, in regards to the idea of him wanting power or dominion, he was offered power and offered dominion. And he told the people of Quraysh that if they were to give him the sun in one hand and the moon in the other, he wouldn't stop what he's doing. Okay. So now you have to take a look at, just revisiting the idea of what you said as far as the motive goes. There's a break in the kind of the motive chain right there that you were putting forth. So I encourage you to look in depth into that. The second is the idea of the dissemination of power, right? And what's the purpose of it? Because there has to be liberating factors. And there has to be, one of the things that I had to come to terms with is that just as much as there's a physical form of existence, there's equally that much greater a spiritual form of existence, right? So this is the whole idea of Islam coming through is not only to revitalize communities materialistically, but to revitalize them spiritually. So like to your point as to what you're saying in regards to the applicability of Sharia, one of the places that you can actually look at is the Sultanate of Brunei, right? So if you've never looked at that country, they are what I would say is probably the closest to the application of Sharia, meaning that they have, one sultan, you can, I don't want to use the term caliph because that holds its own conditions, okay? But even for a caliphate to be established, you have a process that takes place where righteous people are placed. So if you take a look at the caliphates of Omar, if you take a look at the caliphates of Abu Bakr, if you take a look at the caliphates of Uthman, radiallahu anhuma, you will see that they didn't want the responsibility. Okay, which is the first sign of someone that's an honest person and someone who should be appointed into a position of leadership. Is they're saying this is way too great of a responsibility, but the community and the righteous people within that community are pressing that person to go forward, and they go through that democratic process of election. Okay. So now you can see that where their mindset is at and what they're trying to maintain. Okay. Now, the applicability, this is where things gets challenging. So, for example, you can take a look at like Saudi Arabia, and their constitution is a Sharia-based constitution. It's based on the Quran, it's based on the Sunnah. But their application of the constitution may not be exactly in line with it. So now this is and I don't want to, it's not to throw shade in any way, shape, or form, because I'm clearly not of that level of jurisprudential knowledge by any means. But the idea now is the application of these things is where human beings can take a fault. So now this is what I encourage you to do. I encourage you to separate the two, because the Sharia, like I had mentioned, is from the Quran and the Sunnah, which is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a divine Sharia. The application of it, this is where human beings can falter. No one is going to apply it better than the Prophet ﷺ, and then the companions following him, and then the righteous predecessors following them, and so on and so on and so on. Now, where we are today, the Prophet ﷺ had warned us that, things are going to basically get to a point where the further that you are from him, okay, the less and less and less it's going to be applied, and the less and less impactful it will be. Meaning that, and again, I'm paraphrasing over here, but it would be like a cloth with holes in it. Okay, so now, so take those, and separate them categorically. I think that'll really help you on your journey. Secondly, in regards to the changing of religion, okay, you have things in the Sharia, which is the maqasid of the Sharia. You have 10 major maqasid, right? The first one is the preservation of the deen, okay, because we believe that this is indeed a divine deen, and this is the best way forward. Then you have the preservation of life, you have the preservation of intellect, reason, freedom of thought, this, that, and the third, preservation of lineage, and it goes, on and on and on. Now, how is someone actually going to know whether or not you left Islam? You would have to be, you'd have to be like, yo, I left, and basically like holding up a sign. I don't know what's going on in your mind or in your head or, in your heart or anything like that, right? So now you actually have an example in the Quran, and this is in chapter 3, verse 86, I believe, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you that he has guided people and then they left and then he re-guided them back. Okay, so that means that there is obviously a due process to take place. It's not something that you just, apostatize and all of a sudden, you're basically under, torch fire. That's not how it works. So there's a due process that takes place. And this is part of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and an attestation to many of his names. But the due process that takes place is there. So if you were to change in religion, and let's say, for example, you wouldn't want to be around your surroundings anyway. So, for example, you wouldn't want to hear the adhan. You wouldn't want to be around other Muslims. Typically what will happen is someone will emigrate and then they will apostatize, right? So when somebody is out of the picture anyway, this is where it hits that first maqasid of Sharia, where there's a preservation of deen. Obviously, we're going to try to invite the person back rationally, but what happens when they leave the area and they are now under, let's say, a secular rule and a secular nation, for me to even know what's going on with this person is just such a far-fetched thought, right? So that, if you really just try to, break things down just step by step, you'll see that Islam is welcoming and nurturing towards everybody's journey, and that there is a solution, alhamdulillah, for everything, as long as you just follow the process. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. And yeah, it makes complete sense. I've actually read as well. I don't even have really a problem with the style that the Sunnah describes. Especially somebody explained to me as well that the reason why they did it is because that there was a group of Jews in the time of of Muhammad that they converted to Islam only to like bring people out of Islam and they converted back. So it was describing like a specific situation, and it made complete sense to me. So again, I want to be really careful that I'm not saying that I don't believe that the Sharia law itself is not good. The only thing is similar to a conversation that I had with some people that were Catholic, is that I understand that maybe the message from God is not incorrect, is not bad in any way, but the fact that it gives humans the ability to give that to give the humans the power is like already known that the application is going to be messed up. So what I'm trying to say is that
that's a given. And again, I don't mean to interrupt you. It's more. I agree with you, meaning that, but that's part of the examination, brother. Part of the examination is that those people, like for example, someone with extreme amounts of knowledge, if they misuse that knowledge, we have authentic hadith where one of the first people that's going to be thrown into the hellfire is a person of knowledge. Right. The other one is a person of wealth, and the third one is one who claimed that he went on, a military expedition or a jihad to save fi sabilillah, when it was to gain, statues and idols of him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you, now that's the beauty of life. The beauty of life is you have that type of diversity, And this is the perfection of the design of the creator, because otherwise there'd be no examination, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't do pointless things.
Right.
The Jannah is not here, bro. This is dunya. This is
Right.
trial. This is mistake. This is error. This is people being corrupt, being dumb. There's all sorts of things like that. That's where we're at. So what
Right.
you're saying, and from my lens, all you're doing is reinforcing that this is, subhanal khaliq. This is the creator.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me just kind of rephrase real quick to reclarify.
Mhm.
Is for me, it would make a lot more sense um, that if there was a personal journey, because everybody is going to have like their different interpretation, or they're going to use it for their own personal greed. However, obviously, that their application doesn't mean that the message was bad. I understand
Sure.
that, but
Yeah.
just when the goal is for Sharia law to be implemented within an empire, for me, that's bound to go bad because now people have authority, and that's the part that just a
Mhm.
little bit kind of hits me a little bit weird. Even if when the prophet was here
Mhm.
and they in the original Islamic empire it was done in a way that made sense, it's like as soon as the original prophet is not here anymore, things are just going to get bad, 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 bad. And that's why I just don't understand what the point is of
Mhm.
making a law system for an empire if the if like the bound, how do I say that in English?
Well,
If it's
look,
bound to,
so
yeah,
it's not the system that fails. Just like you said, it's the
it's the people's
application of the
application.
system. Right. And so
Right.
what does that mean? That means that the person who is the corrupter is bound to fail, because you have to look at it holistically, right? Even you yourself are a deist, so you believe in an
Right.
afterlife. So the idea now is the scales will be set to balance. So you
Okay.
can't look at it, and this is what you're doing. You're making a categorical error. And it's, I don't think you're doing it like maliciously. I think you're just doing it just because you want the best. Like, it seems to me you have a
Right.
relatively altruistic nature, which I respect. So you have to understand that uh, those people that are put in those positions, the examination for them is different than it is for you. So just like you said, it has to be a personal journey, and it is a personal
Right.
journey. You're not going to be put in a judge's spot to issue like a bunch of fiqh. Like, you're just not going to do that, right?
Right.
So what I'm saying to you is you're so far deep. You're like 150 feet deep into the ocean right now, but you actually
Okay.
haven't. My question to you is why not just agree with the principalities of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, knowing of the things that you just said, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does exist. He sent messengers, he sent books. It seems to me, and even when you said like Prophet Muhammad was there, and things were basically as perfect as they could be, none of this is impeding now of what the original question was, which was what was his motive, and you said that his motive was for authority. And I'm saying
Right.
that that's not the case, because for all the reasons we discussed, right? So if it wasn't for authority, uh, and again, it was for the purpose of prophethood and guidance, then why worry about the Sharia system and how its misapplications are? I'm not seeing how you're threading the two
Yeah,
together.
and I can see where I went off a little bit because I guess my second thing that I was going into is I don't understand why the Sharia law would be in place in the first place if it would only be used in the right way during the prophet. However,
Again, it's
uh,
presumptuous, right?
yeah,
What you're saying is that it's not going to be used in the right way. What what the best thing to say is it's not going to be used in the maximally perfect way. But
okay,
look at the alternative. The alternative is if Sharia wasn't there, then you'd be like, well, you didn't really give us anything to do, so how are you grading us now? That's
right.
the
Because for
alternative.
me, yeah, well, for me the alternative was to not make it into an empire and instead to make it into a religion based off of personal journey.
Okay,
Uh,
so maybe this will help you out.
yeah,
You understand that there is Sharia for the individual, right? And then there's Sharia
yeah,
for the society, right? Because it's a very
right.
vast system. Okay. And
Yeah, I
again, what you're
understand that.
doing is categorically you're conflating the two. So, like, for example, if I were to tell you that the Sharia of you as an individual is to pray 5 times a day, fast during Ramadan, give zakah, right? This is your Sharia.
Right.
It's as simple
Yeah, I
as that.
understand that. Mhm.
Yeah. So
But
now is the judge going to know whether you fasted really during Ramadan? Like, did you cheat
no,
that? No. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to know. Right. So
right.
then back to what your point is of saying, hey, I need this to be a personal journey. Brother, it is. Everything that you're
Right.
saying is there. But don't look at the grander, you're not there yet.
Yeah, and I understand that. I understand as well that there's the Sharia, but I mean I'm mainly just talking about the Sharia law in terms of authority and power or in government. But anyways, it makes sense what you said. Uh, so I'll concede that, and yeah, I guess as well, um, to the original motive of the of the prophet.
Mm.
I could see because I guess you're right as well. I'm kind of conflating the end application of the Sharia law to something that doesn't even have the inclusion of the
Sure.
prophet because the prophet didn't
Yeah.
do that, and that's something that I haven't thought about. So
Sure.
I appreciate you pointing that out to me.
Yeah,
But
you're
yeah,
most welcome back anytime. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to guide you and your family
yeah, thank
and
you so
loved ones
much.
and stuff. And just come on by anytime. And thank you for the cordial discussion.
Yep, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Take care.